I'm going to talk to you about my new book, which is about street names in Da Nang, in Vietnam. It started, my interest in street names started many years ago when I was running the Dutch Art for Children gallery, and we were approached by a children's hospital. The problem was that young children always got lost in the hospital. Well, it's kind of logic, because direction signs in hospital, they are just as art in museums, made for adults, not for children. So we suggest children can't read, make a nice picture of this room, of the waiting room, of the operation room, instead of text, and hang the signs on their height. This one is a drawing made by Juliette Witt, when she heard that we are hanging art for children on the height of the children and not much higher for the adults, because children cannot jump the whole time while adults can easily bow. So the hospital did it, and it was a great success. So a lower school, they heard about it, and they had the same problem, because the youngest children, they also cannot read the street names. They also approached us, and we organized an activity during which the children were drawing their own street signs. Of course, you can see it here. That's an article in a Dutch newspaper about the concept of having children make their own street signs. So I have some kind of relation with streets. In fact, in Vietnam, everybody comes in Vietnam got some street relation. You just look at my t-shirt, and then you see the very beautiful electric wires all in the Vietnam streets there. It's amazing how they know which wire is from what. I think they not always know that. In each case, due to COVID, we had to close the Da Nang Art for Children gallery, and I decided to stay in Vietnam. So I had a lot of time to walk, and that's what I did. I always walk kind of circle. First I went to get me my meat pâté, then I went to the tea shop to eat it and to have a coffee or a tea. Indeed, it's the tea shop, I think you remember, where those beautiful girls were working, the girls you saw in their aoyaya at the end of my video about the South. So, and then when I finished, I walked back through the hello streets. Those are streets of people, they are living on the streets always, and they are very enthusiastic. Hey, hello, hello, what's your name? And then they invite me to eat or to drink something with them. Streets in Vietnam, they have of course real names. And I knew that streets in Vietnam are named after important people from the past, and seeing those names every day, I wanted to know more about those people. I wrote down the street names, and at home I did some research. And I wrote down a few things about them, easy to remember. It was so interesting that I decided to make such a circle for each district in Da Nang. As you can see on the map, well, some people, they are very famous in Vietnam. Even if you only your first visit at Vietnam, you know already. For example, General Vo Nguyen Giap, who was in 1954, he was responsible for the fighting in Dien Bien Phu, and who gave the French their greatest defeat. And of course everybody knows the Hai Ba Trung, the two sisters Trung. You can see streets, schools and so on all over Vietnam wearing their names. So those are the very famous ones. But for example, who knows Tai Thi Boy? It was an overactive young woman who set up a bookstore in Da Nang in the 30s, and where in addition to books there were mutual contacts. They were so important that a lot of people came there to meet each other, to talk about progress and all this. And one of them was Wo Nguyen Giap. And most of us are familiar with the great victory at Dien Bien Phu, but who knows the story of Be Van Dam? The young Thai, his company was in danger of being completely destroyed because they had no undercarriage for their machine gun anymore. So he saved his team by placing himself under the machine gun, and although soon he was mortally wounded, he remained upright to hold the machine gun and thus saving the lives of his mates. In each city you find several streets named after those what we can call local heroes. It is so interesting because walking through the streets is like walking in a museum. Stories tells us what the impact of those events was on the lives of ordinary citizens. To give each circle something of its own, I looked what those people in that circle had in common, with the result that each circle gives a different picture of the past. So I have one circle with examples that something suddenly happens and changes their whole life. In other circles, there are people who are trying to build up things. So I thought it was nice to do it like that. But it was not always easy to find information. Look at the Da Nang Museum had given me a list with the names of the people who lived in Da Nang and who had a street named after them, like Tai Thi Boy. And talking about her, and when I was reading your stories, what stands out very much is the importance of Vietnamese women. Vietnamese, they are not that big already, but that doesn't stop them. Even the smaller woman, that was 2000 years ago, already with when the Trong sister raised an entire army of women and drove the mighty Chinese army back to China. Well, nothing has changed. This time, more recently, for the American soldiers, when they faced the dreaded South Vietnamese long-haired army. I read about them in a book written by Arlene Eisenbergman, this book, A Woman of Vietnam. It has some nice illustrations from Jane Norling, and you see here here she makes the drawing for the long-haired army. But another very nice picture is this one, when General Dinh visit the old woman in the south, and then you see this the woman, the long-haired army. It's so interesting. But perhaps even more striking is the importance of poetry in Vietnamese history. Whoever wonders, how did the Vietnamese endure all those occupations and humiliations? When you're reading it's so... But the answer is poetry. They have been writing so much poetry in jails, not in jails, everywhere they wrote poetry, and great poetry. And isn't it striking that the most famous book in Vietnam is a more than 3,000 verse poem by the 18th century writer Nguyen Du about a girl, Q. This book. But you find so many of them. This is another version, because it has many beautiful lines. In the past, and even now, that a lot of Vietnamese, they still remember several lines of the book because it's such a rich text, so many beautiful things in it. And so the stories of Vietnam, that's the story of Q, is a little bit like a mirror of what Vietnamese people had to endure during all those times. It's over a period for more than 2,000 years. Vietnam had many occupations. usually by much larger and wealthier powers who brutally suppressed any attempt of insurrections. And well, it was often emotional to read about so many young people fighting for a free country that died in jail before they even became adults. So I wanted to keep the text short. I could write so much about them, but I just want a kind of introduction, so I hope people will read more about those people. They're so interesting, especially the local heroes. So, but when you only has text, there's missing something. I wanted some additional information, like what they look like. Now, my father was an artist, and he once made a lot of pen drawings for history books with portraits of famous people. They're this kind of drawings in black and white, very nice. And when you're reading and then you see those, then you can imagine, oh yeah, that's in that time people looked like that, or that guy, he was looking like that. So I love that. And I thought it would be great to do the same for those stories. Thanks to Hak-Swan, we came in contact with Bùi Thịnh, and he was not only able to make this kind of portraits, he also loved to do a lot of research, which was needed because of several of them. There was almost no documentation, at least for me, because my Vietnamese is very, very limited, and to find, even with Google, pictures of those people is very, very difficult, but he spent a lot of time on that. I think the best is that he can tell you, he himself, about he did it. So the rest of this video is with Bùi Thịnh.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người. Mình là họa sĩ Bùi Thịnh. Mình đến từ Quảng Nam, Việt Nam. Mình tốt nghiệp khoa hội họa trường Đại học Nghệ thuật Huế năm 2014. Và vừa rồi là mình rất là may mắn và vui khi được nghệ sĩ Xuân Hạ, một nghệ sĩ thị giác đến từ Đà Nẵng, đã kết nối cho mình được làm việc cùng với lại bên công ty trao đổi văn hóa nghệ thuật, thì được làm việc chung với lại một dự án của bác Roby đến từ Hà Lan. Dự án của bác là một cái cuốn sách nói về các vị anh hùng đến từ Quảng Nam và Đà Nẵng. Một cái câu chuyện khá là hay. Khi nhận được cái công việc này và được làm việc chung với bác thông qua cái câu chuyện của bác, thì mình rất là vui vì mình có thời gian. Thì trước đây là mình học lịch sử và mình đi qua những con đường đó, những thành phố mình đang sống, nhưng mà mình là người Quảng Nam luôn, nhưng mà mình không có hiểu gì về không có tìm hiểu sâu sắc về cái tên của những con đường đó. Mà nhờ cái câu chuyện, cái dự án của bác được vẽ minh họa cho cuốn sách của bác, thì mình có thời gian để nghiên cứu, tìm tư liệu về những cái con người đó, những cái vị anh hùng đó. Ví dụ như hầu hết những con đường ở Đà Nẵng là những nhân vật ở đó, thì lúc mà học lịch sử thì mình chỉ học thoáng thoáng qua thôi, và tìm hiểu sâu sắc hơn thì mình thấy khá là hay. Hầu hết là xuất thân từ những cái phong trào duy tân và những cái vị chí sĩ yêu nước của người Quảng Nam, chính quê hương của mình. Rất là vui mình có cơ hội để đến thư viện để tìm những tư liệu và nghiên cứu về những cái nhân vật đó. Có những nhân vật thì có hình ảnh sẵn, có ảnh chụp thì rất là dễ, nhưng mà cũng có những nhân vật hư cấu để tưởng tượng lên. Thì thông qua tìm hiểu về tính cách con người, về cái nghề nghiệp các vị đó, thì bằng cái trí tưởng tượng của mình đã phát thảo lại, thông qua trí tưởng tượng của mình hiểu về cái nhân vật đó. Trong lúc thời gian làm việc thì cảm ơn thêm một người nữa, đó chính là Oanh bên công ty trao đổi văn hóa nghệ thuật đã tạo điều kiện thông dịch và truyền tải những cái yêu cầu của bác Roby, người tác giả người Hà Lan của cuốn sách đó, cho mình biết những yêu cầu về công việc. Và thông qua anh, mình không giỏi tiếng Anh cho nên mình chỉ nói tiếng Việt, thì nhờ anh đã truyền tải lại những ý kiến, góp ý và hình vẽ của mình, câu chuyện, những cái góp ý của mình cho bác để mà tạo ra một cái cuốn sách tốt nhất. Rất là vui. Cũng gần 1 năm vì dịch bệnh, và mình cũng vừa mới hoàn thành xong cái dự án câu chuyện nói về những nhân vật và vị anh hùng của Quảng Nam và Đà Nẵng, Hội An và Đà Nẵng. Thì vừa hoàn thành xong thì mình cũng rất là vui, vì nhờ Xuân Hạ đã kết nối. Cảm ơn Xuân Hạ, cảm ơn Oanh bên công ty trao đổi văn hóa và bác Roby, tác giả của cái cuốn sách đó, đã giúp cho mình có một cái công việc và có thêm những kiến thức về những nhân vật vị anh hùng mà trong lúc trước mình không có nghiên cứu, thì bây giờ mình có thời gian để mình tìm hiểu lại. Là được Oanh đã trong lúc thời gian làm việc thì anh đã là người đã truyền tải và giúp cho mình hiểu về tiếng nước ngoài, vì mình làm việc với một người nước ngoài nhưng mà mình không có hiểu tiếng Anh được, và bác cũng không có giỏi về tiếng Việt, thì nhờ anh đã giúp cho mình. Cảm ơn mọi người, và mời mọi người xem qua những cái công việc, những cái tác phẩm của mình trong lúc làm. Và bây giờ mình đang còn giữ cái bản gốc ở đây, thì mình mới chỉ gửi cái bản thảo cho bác, tại vì bác đang ở Hà Lan. Đây là một số những cái bản thảo sketch cho cái cuốn sách của bác. Rồi, xin chào mọi người. Cảm ơn Xuân Hạ, cảm ơn Oanh, cảm ơn bác. Hẹn gặp lại ở những dự án tiếp tục.